Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes podcast. Today we're joined by Joe Megibow, who's the CEO of Purple. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you. Happy New Year. Almost.
Happy almost New Year. This will be the last podcast of 2020 and good riddance to 2020.
Yes, sir.
All right. On that note, how's 2020 been for Purple? Up, down, medium? How did it go for you?
Yeah, it's not a simple question as you can answer through many different lenses. And I think this is true for many businesses. It's been a really, really hard year on us, certainly as employees and as human citizens. It's been a rough year. As as a business, financially speaking, especially, it's been an extraordinarily good year for us. Not only in terms of our ability to produce cash and net revenue, and clearly, if we're producing cash, profit, but also even just our contribution to the unemployment situation, especially here in Utah. I mean, we've hired over 800 people this year through the pandemic, and we, like most, put nearly a third of the company on furlough back in March when this all began. So the idea that we've been able to not only pull everyone back, recover quickly, but grow so extraordinarily all the way down to increasing our labor pool. It's really been a remarkable year in terms of the business success side of things.
Yeah. So outside of 2020, do you think there will be a more challenging year for you as a CEO? Hopefully not, but can you fathom it?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, if you had asked me in 2019 about 2020, no one would have predicted where things came, how things played out. I don't know. We're becoming a much bigger, more complex company. And this is my first CEO gig. So, what is in front of me remains to be seen. I take it as I go. I'm not a grand schemer where I know, we take it as we go and we put the right team in place. I certainly hope 2021 is not as challenging as 2020 was, but if we execute on everything we are trying to, it's going to be a very complicated year anyway, as again, we're becoming a very big company.
Yeah. It's got to inspire confidence that you guys can roll with the punches, take it on the chin, and come out fine, though. I've heard that a lot interacting with CEOs on this podcast and our events. You can always reference 2020 as like, hey, we did it.
Yeah, for sure. And a big part of any team, whether it's a sporting team or a musical group or a company is, have you tested yourself? Do you know how you can operate? Do you know what you can do under pressure? Do you know how you can respond when things aren't going well? And there was a lot of that this year. But honestly, and, happy to talk about this, in many ways, I think 2019 was a more challenging year for us. As when I joined in the end, toward the end of 2018, we were a broken company. I mean, we had outgrown our capabilities. We were not profitable. We were burning enormous amounts of cash. We had a very uncertain future. And in early 2019, we let 15% of the company go. That's not a great place to be. So again, for all of the challenges we dealt with this year, in a lot of ways, 2019 was our reckoning. It was where we had to face our future and make tough decisions and decide if we were really going to see this through. And I'd say 2020 only reinforced to me how impressive the team was in 2019 in putting the right team in place and setting us up to be able to take advantage of the opportunities that we faced in 2020.
Yeah. So first time as a CEO, and you've been with Purple a few years now. What's a quick synopsis of your path to Purple? What led you here?
Oh, goodness. I turned 52 in about 6 weeks, I suppose. So condensing 5 decades into a few minutes is always interesting, as everybody's journeys are typically twisty and unpredictable. I'd say I grew up with a family of musicians with the genetic wiring as an engineer. So I sort of have always been sort of compressed somewhere between art and science. It's interesting being the career-minded, meticulous one, being the black sheep in the family of musicians is sort of opposite. Growing up, I loved Alex P. Keaton and Family Ties. Growing up under some hippies there, so very similar childhood in many ways. But that intersection has really defined much of my career. I started as an engineer, electrical engineer, and very data driven. Went back, and this was early '90s, and sort of pre-web. After in business school, I discovered the notion of at the time what we call data-driven market analytics, which is the idea that you could actually take a data-driven approach to marketing effectiveness, which was sort of this explosive idea to me that I could apply some of my analytical capabilities and my love of good marketing and bring them together. And those two things really defined much of my career. I helped start a company in the late '90s called Tea Leaf Technology. Was part of the founding team there, and we ultimately sold to IBM. But that was a company really built on identifying and analyzing consumer behavior, consumer experiences on the web across some of the largest transactional sites out there. So spent 3/4 of a decade really figuring out the psyche and behavior of consumers as they engaged with digital interfaces. And that led me into Expedia, where I spent 6 years, really building up much of their online capabilities. In the end, left there, was running the US business there, so running Expedia.com. Flipped over into retail and really fell in love with vertically integrated retail. So spent a number of years at American Eagle Outfitters as their chief digital officer, which is not, it's more than even figuring out how do you do e-commerce well as an apparel company or as a traditionally brick and mortar retailer, but how do you really figure out an omnichannel approach is, by the time I left there, consumers, you didn't have online consumers and brick and mortar consumers. They were all the same customer. And how do you really reassess everything you do top to bottom as a company to make sure you're servicing your customers first and foremost, from the products you make to how you do planning and what and how much you manufacture and what you put where, to how you actually think about the role of your stores and the role of your website and how they play together. And it was very transformative for me personally and for the company as we figured out that broader retail capability. Which is interesting too. At a company like Expedia, we basically had unlimited inventory. We were the largest travel agency at the time, but we were still, less than 10% of the total market. So if my team could come up with a way to increase conversion overnight, that was always a good thing. When you're a vertically integrated manufacturer, you're making buys long before you sell things. So if overnight you come up with a way to increase conversion and you didn't see that coming, you just burn through inventory on hand. And what seemed like a good thing is actually a bad thing. So, being a manufacturer and actually owning your product opens up all sorts of new challenges in planning and building out capabilities, which is just, I loved that. So after that, did another little startup, which was a mixed success. Worked with private equity for a little while as an operating advisor, and ultimately found Purple, which was just this amazing intersection of science and manufacturing and differentiated product, along with some really innovative marketing and a product that consumers loved. It was. I look from my days with private equity, it was almost a perfect private equity candidate as an underlying business that was really strong, but had a lot of enormous operational challenges in front of it. And it was, could we unlock that and figure out how to turn this into a big, healthy company? And that was a challenge I couldn't help myself but want to join. And they took a bet on me, and I took a bet on them, and it's been a good run so far.
That's great. Yeah, you clearly enjoy it. So you guys have a big manufacturing plant out in Twilla by the racetrack.
We do.
And, so it sounds like when you're walking through there, you might be tempted to tinker with the machines a little bit.
We've got little lasers on everything, and if you cross your hands through them, it shuts everything down. So I've made that mistake a few times, and everyone gets grumpy with me. So I try to keep my hands to myself. But we've got a great team, and honestly, we get ideas top to bottom on improving efficiencies and new capabilities. And it's been part of our cultural transformation, is really that sort of that ability to communicate and improve the company. And some of it, honestly, when I'm out there, isn't so much me tinkering, but me listening. And we get great ideas, and we do listen a lot. And it's some of the ideas we got have been game changing for the company. So yeah, I love going out there.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really big. All right. So one of the words on the website and you've brought up is a digitally native vertical brand. What is that?
That's something investors like to talk about. It's in the age of Amazon, and clearly looking at just even Q4 and retail sales, it's the Amazons and Walmarts and Targets and these online large everything stores are winning, and are winning by a lot. In the age of Amazon, how do you compete? And it's also increasingly hard to be a brand online. There's a lot of commoditization going on and a lot of vertical integration where the retailers themselves are keeping all the margin for themselves and either launching house brands or putting things under their own brand. Even if you look at like a Costco, an enormous percentage of their revenue is on house brands, and consumers have learned to trust those brands and enjoy. It's a joint value creation. It's savings for the consumer, and it's better margins for the retailer. So how do you compete in that world? And brick and mortar is expensive. And there's a lot of very beleaguered traditional retailers right now because of the overhead they're carrying on what really looks now like overbuilt retail investment. So one way to compete is make product yourself, that only you make, that consumers really want to buy, and then control the channel relationship with the consumer, which today is going to be led by digital first. And that's really what that acronym, which investors have used to describe things. It's a digitally native business. It's a business that grew up, that was born into the digital world, and are digital first. It's a brand, and it's a vertically integrated brand. And that's what we are. We manufacture our product that we design and create, that is a very unique, patent protected, tons of trade secrets, innovative product that we've actually been working on for 30 years now. We are a brand, and little by little becoming a lifestyle brand. And we are digital first, even though it's a physical product. And we partnered with over 2,100 retail doors now to bring our product to life. And we're opening our own showrooms. We've got 9 right now as really places to bring the brand to life. We're still digitally first, and it is still, more than 2/3 of our net revenue goes through our own direct channels. And that's how you compete, and that's the heart of what we do.
Yeah. So what catches your eye the best? The digital, B2C, the retail connections and stores, your own stores. What part of the business do you prefer to operate?
I'm very consumer oriented. The only way I can look at the world is through our customers' eyes. And to me, at the end of the day, the only thing we've got with them is our product. So it begins and ends with product for me. They're going to be using our product for typically 7 to 10 years. Their relationship with the transaction is, likely a few weeks. So ultimately, it's, do we really have product that delivers on the promise we've set forth, that they are raving about for years and years into the future? And that's what gets me up in the morning. That's my focus. And it's everything from how we bring new product to market, how we make the product we have better, how we maintain quality and consistency, and do that at scale, as we are a much, much bigger manufacturer than we were a few years ago. That's it. That's what keeps me going every day.
Yeah. So people will bring up their beds occasionally, right? Like people bring up, at least in my world, golf clubs. I got a new golf club. You got to look at it. And they're basically free salespeople. Cars, everyone can see, but you can't, see, people's beds for the most part. But what are some of your kind of favorite stories of unofficial brand ambassadors as far as like sales tools?
Yeah, I mean, we've sold to over 1 million customers now. This year, just through Q3, we're just shy of 500 million in sales. So, I mean, we've got a lot of customers out there. We've got a lot of ambassadors, including a long list of very famous people whom, unfortunately, often without paying them a lot of money, no matter how happy they are, they're not going to publicly talk about it. But my favorite stories are not the shiny, celebrities or influencers. It's the real stories of real people whose lives we fundamentally changed, and I love those stories, and we get them every single day. And I mean, it's not well understood how different our product really is. I mean, this, for those who are watching on the video, this crazy purple waffly grid stuff that you see behind me. Um, but there is real benefit to what we've invented through the years, which is roots are in medical. I mean, initially we were making medical beds and medical seat cushions for things like wheelchair pads, and those benefits carry through. So, there's stories we get of, people's parents, a mom who chronic back problems for a decade, and on some very heavy duty pain medication for her back. And after getting into the purple bed, not only has the back pain completely subsided, but completely off her meds. Life changing. Younger women, we've got an employee of ours who went through a fairly destructive pregnancy that actually caused some physical damage to the base of her spinal cord. And after over a year of pain and suffering and multiple orthopedists, and resigning herself to just not ever being able to have a quality night's sleep again, found our mattress, and that's gone. She sleeps through the night well every year and works for us now, which to me is the ultimate gift. We've got story after story, whether it's athletes or those in pain. And keep in mind, most people aren't actually happy with their beds. And if you talk about why people buy new beds, the number one reason that comes up by a lot is pain.
Yeah.
People have a aspirational desire to have a better night's sleep, and the importance of sleep is growing in awareness on human health and longevity. But it's been a surprisingly slow-moving, uninventive category with not a lot of consumer satisfaction or brand love.
Yeah.
That there's a ton of opportunity, and just we're still an early young player, but the fact that we've been able to genuinely improve the quality of life for at least many of our customers, just amazing. And these are you can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's just genuine, true stories.
Yeah, that moves the needle in people's lives if they're not in pain anymore. What's your favorite purple product?
Oh goodness, I use them all. I'm sitting on one of our seat cushions right now. I have beds for my wife and me and my three boys. I and the beds are what it's all about, obviously. But our new pillow we launched, our Harmony pillow, which I think in many ways brings together the best of what we can do. We had a niche pillow that's made entirely of our purple grid, and it's a remarkable pillow. And for some sleeping styles, for some sleepers, it is truly game changing. Game changing. I won't say who, but the chief merchant at one of the larger retailers that sells mattresses, across furniture and mattress specialty. He himself tried our pillow and told me he'd never slept more than 3 contiguous hours in a night in his 30 years in the industry. And our pillow, our traditional pillow that we sell, our original purple pillow, was the first pillow he actually slept through the night. So changed the way he slept. But it was a divisive pillow. It's a 10-pound pillow, and it's very different than any pillow anyone else has ever slept on. I mean, it's a very different kind of pillow. So our goal was, could we take everything great about that pillow and package it up in something that was more familiar and feels like a pillow and can be oriented top to bottom, bottom to top, side to side. I mean, just behaves and looks and feels like a pillow. And our Harmony was the output of that. It was 18 months of development. We got a couple patents out of that one alone, a whole all new manufacturing process. And we went out with the ever so modest, the greatest pillow ever invented tagline. I think a lot of reviewers tried to take us to task on that. And in the end, we've won everyone over. We cannot make these things fast enough. It is an amazing pillow. And we're really proud of how the team pulled this together.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems like a lot of fun to put the science behind it, and then the engineering and the business and the marketing. The one purple product that I do own is the seat pad that you're sitting on, and I took it duck hunting, and it was fantastic. You didn't have to shift around as much and ruin the duck hunting, and it worked really good. Probably not
Yeah.
what it was designed for, but
Well, and I
birding
mean,
now.
you bring up the amazing possibilities for Purple. You could think of us as just a mattress company. We don't view ourselves that way. And I mean, the name of our company is Purple Innovation. And our cushions are an example of this. Today, they're fairly generic, sort of one design for any function kind of seat cushion. But as you think about hunting or camping or outdoors or sporting events or fitness or transportation, I mean, it turns out long haul truck drivers love our seat cushion. Call center,
Oh yeah.
those who work in call center operations love our seat cushion. Gamers love our seat cushion. But again, we just sell them as square black bricks. And there's a ton of opportunity for us to continue to extend, and we will.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so, as a publicly traded company, I know you can't talk about the future too much, but maybe using some past examples. So from the idea in somebody's brain or the data showing this, what's a quick, like the product roadmap from that stage to it's being sold in the stores and online? How does that usually go?
It varies, and I think many would be surprised how long it can take. I mean, it's from ideation to product. I'd say typically you're talking around 18 months on average, till it's actually up for sale. Some things can go faster, some things can take years. And there's a science side to this business. I'll give you an example. Almost all of the applications we've used are core ingredients for the gels and elastic polymers of our own invention, and the manufacturing techniques of those have been primarily for indoor use. I mean, you talk about take a seat cushion hunting, which is perfectly fine, but if you left that seat cushion in your car every day through the summer in Arizona, it would put some pressure on it. The interior temperature of vehicles can get up to north of 150 degrees, and our gels start to deteriorate at high temperature. So say we want to do something that can handle that. We have material scientists who take that on and figure out how we reformulate and build all new materials that have the properties we want. And it's not even just can it handle it, but does it have the right feel and texture and responsiveness? And I mean, there's a lot of work we put into this, and that's not something you just whip together in 30 days. So some of it is real research, and we do a lot of real research and have some really interesting products going on. And that's just on the material side. As you start thinking about the excitement of really getting into sleep, there's all these sleep trackers right now. Things that help you assess patterns and behaviors, but at the end of the day, they tell you what you likely already know. Did I sleep well or not? If you wake up feeling awful, it's going to tell you didn't sleep well. And if you wake up feeling great, it's probably going to tell you slept great. Maybe it unlocks some behaviors in your life to help you sleep great more often. But at the end of the day, it's just data. The opportunity to put that data to work and actually take active control of sleep is enormous. And it's just uncharted territory right now. So there's a lot that's possible in front of us, and we've got a really smart team working on all sorts of amazing things. But it's I mentioned how much we put the customer first. I mean, we tend to start with real consumer needs. We listen to customers. We do a lot of surveying and response. We open ourselves up to criticism. We get a lot of feedback that isn't positive, and we take that just as seriously as the praise, and make sure that, it's the classic, you're only good as your weakest links. And we look constantly for opportunities to improve and make us better. And all that goes in, which means part of the design process is we have a panel of testers and independent users. We've done everything from hundreds of hours of in-home research, just talking to people who don't even know we're Purple, to actually giving product to people just to get feedback. And like the pillow I mentioned that we spent 18 months on, it wasn't like we went through the design process. At the end, there was this, glowing, wonderful product. We went
Right.
through probably 15 to 20 different product iterations along the way, of which, let's just say the number was 20, 19 of them didn't work for us. And it wasn't until we got to that magical 20th one that we had the right product. And it's a constant classic case of try, fail, iterate, and keep going. And there's a lot of consumer engagement through that process.
Yeah, that's very cool. And it obviously keeps the team engaged too.
For
And
sure.
that's growing. Very cool. All right. So the podcast is called Meat and Potatoes. And I always ask these questions. How do you structure your days, just personally? What are some tricks and tools that you use? And then second question along those lines, how do you interact with your team on a kind of a daily basis? Is it they're talking to you? Is it site visits? How do you manage your time and days?
Yeah, it's and I'll just say, you have to be a little crazy to do this job that I do. I have always heard that you got to be a little nuts to take this specific role, and I think I've learned that's probably true. So let's just put that out there right away. I'll moment of self-awareness. But it's at the core. Well, let me back up and say I got some advice probably 10 years ago from a very seasoned public company board member who himself had been a CEO many, many times. And he had said to me that a CEO really only has three responsibilities. This oversimplification, but I think there's some truth to it. It's one, set the strategy for the company and make sure all stakeholders inside and outside the company are fully bought in. The second thing is hire the very best people you can. And the third thing is make sure there's cash in the bank.
Sure.
And in a lot of ways, that is where I focus a lot of my time. I spend a lot of time making sure that whether it's investors or analysts or partners or everyone in the company is aligned on what are we trying to do? Are we all heading in the same direction? Are we prioritizing? There's always resource constraints. There's always conflicting priorities and competing goals. How do we make sure that everyone understands ultimately how to reconcile those things, and we're all ultimately making the right choices and good choices? Because I can't be everywhere. So I spend a lot of time on that, and that's about communications. Hiring the very best people you can. It's are they set up for success? Are they empowered? Where we identify as we grow that we have gaps, that we need new good people. Whether it's we're upgrading as we get bigger and bigger, and this happens in a growing company. Sometimes someone who is perfect to take something from nothing to something isn't necessarily the right person to go from something to something really big. If you're
Right.
lucky, they are that same person. Sometimes they're not. And the good ones know that. And either they choose to go to another smaller company or they take on a role more suited to their skills. But how do you continue to assess where are we as an organization, and are we continuing to be set up for success given our pace of growth? And cash. I mean, it's are we making the best choices we can and managing appropriately, which is even just trade-offs on, how much we're optimizing for growth versus producing wealth. As those two, you do a little of both at the same time, but they compete ultimately for what you're optimizing for. But the big piece on the first two is communications. And the very first week with my company, as I was getting to know everyone, and I did an all hands in front of everybody. And at that time, we could get most of us into one location. We were a much smaller company then. And I put out a statement. I said, tell you what, I barely know you, you barely know me, but any question you're willing to ask, I'm willing to answer. If you're willing to ask it, I'm willing to answer it as best as I legally can. And that's how I began my journey with Purple, and that's how we've kept things going. With COVID, as we've been more distributed, we do biweekly all hands. We're at 1,600 people now, so it's not quite as personal, but I open it up to unmoderated Q&A every 2 weeks with the entire company and get a lot of questions, and some of them are doozies. I mean, I'll give you an example. We're opening a new facility in Atlanta, Georgia, outside Atlanta, Georgia, another 500,000 square feet. The one in Tooele County, as you mentioned, is over 500,000 square feet as well. And someone asked, with this new focus on Georgia, and we're going to have newer equipment and newer processes, are we going to scale back in Utah? And someone asked, should we be worried for our jobs? It's good for that person for asking the question. And I could have chose to ignore it. I didn't. I said, if they're willing to ask, I bet others are feeling the same thing. And we hit it head on, which is no chance at all are we going to scale back. We need every person out there and every ounce of productivity we have, as we're growing faster than we can build capacity right now. But I'm glad someone asked the question. And those are the kinds of dialogues that are important to make sure everyone's aligned. And it's a big part of how I focus. A lot of what I do all day is just engaging with people at all levels to make sure that I can see the full chessboard and make sure I understand where we're not all playing the same game.
Yeah, that's a lot of spinning plates, to say the least. Question on the days leading up to an earnings call. So, for those that aren't familiar, those happen 4 times a year. That's a completely different ball game for those that have listened to them. That would probably be a good sleep aid, right? Listening to earnings calls and dozing off. But there's a lot of pressure that goes into that, a lot of writing and a lot of arithmetic and spreadsheets and getting ready. What are the days leading up to it? And when do you start thinking about, getting really ready for those calls?
So we never stop thinking about those, ever. And part of it is the earnings call is partly a history lesson. It's partly what just happened and understanding why. But the only reason the history is cared about at all is using that knowledge to try to predict what's going to happen moving forward. And that's the whole dance. Because how our stock price is traded is built around some sense of futures. It's can they assess what they think is going to happen next quarter, next year, in multiple years, depending if you're a short-term or long-term investor. The long-term investors want to have faith that the market is undervaluing what our potential is and buy in for the long haul to capitalize on that that opportunity, which is frankly what our longer investors have gotten over the last couple of years with us. And the more short-term investors are looking for ripples. Hey, they're hearing that the next quarter is going to be a little worse than prior quarters. How do we use that to kind of ride the waves on us with very little interest in our specific business or long-term goals, but they're just trying to understand. And there's a lot of money flowing around on this. So every word we say, everything we reveal is going to get unpacked and analyzed by very seasoned professionals to all the way down. If you ever really want to get entertained, there's Reddit threads and discussion boards where amateur investors are creating remarkably thoughtful, though often misguided analyses on what's going on, including random things that happen. Like I've had people recognize me in the Salt Lake City airport and start interrogating me for financial information. And I'm like, slow down.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then they go right onto Reddit and publish the whole conversation. So this stuff gets unpacked. It's kind of crazy. And you just have to step back and say, we have our own view of what's going to happen with the business, and how do we as fairly and earnestly, knowing there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of risk in any business, present as fair a view as we can. And the analysts, especially, who are the ones who are, work for the big banks to try to build a model that they believe is grounded in reality, how to help steer them to understand where things are going, as they tend to lead the market's view of what's going on. So yeah, the word choices we make, what we lead with the headlines, how and when we give this information, how much we want to commit to exhibit our confidence, but not overcommit where there's opportunity for miss. We're trying to build trust. We're trying to do it in a way that if we say we're going to do something, then that's what we do, and people believe us and don't invent their own alternative narratives. And it's a lot of work, and it's a little bit of a dance, and it's not just the earnings call. We probably have another 8 hours of calls after the earnings call. We can't say anything to any one investor that we haven't said to everybody. But it's interesting. A lot of investors and analysts don't want to reveal their own secrets, so they're not going to ask the questions. Just, did I hear that right? Or can you just clarify that for me? Kind of questions. They want to do that in private. And our largest investors and our analysts all ask for one-on-one time, which we'll give to anyone who is engaged with our business at any time. But there's hours and hours of calls afterwards just to let them ask the questions that, again, are typically somewhere in our statements. They're just trying to clarify and maybe try to hear us slip up, which we don't ever do, on saying something specific. But it's a funny dance. But in the end, they own the company, and we feel a heavy responsibility to our shareholders. They own the company. They're the ones who have bet their own money on our business. And in the same way, we try to get it right for our customers every day. It's a different customer audience of ours, and we have an obligation to every day help do what we can do to make sure that the money they've put into our business is money well spent.
Yeah. Yeah, everything that you described previous to that earnings call question was fun. That the marketing and the manufacturing and the team building and everything, and then all the fun goes out of it once these piranhas, who are also happen to be pretty smart, start trying to angle in and try to get a slip up.
But you know what? It's funny, and with COVID, I've seen more of this. People are people. And many of these analysts we've known for many years, but we've only known them as voices on a phone. And with Zoom, everything went video. So I'm seeing their kids walk in, I'm seeing their dogs and cats crawl around, and they're all people. And at the end of the day, these aren't computers you're engaging with; they're humans who are making judgment calls. And what I love is trying to unpack how you get it right for that customer. And it's a different customer. And kind of what I talk about, data-driven market analytics, which I've been kind of focusing on in some capacity for goodness, close to 30 years now. And it's just a different customer. And it's when you figure it out and you get it right, and and they're happy with you, it's so rewarding. And you see it in terms of their investment in the company and better investors and people who believe in you, and they become helpful. They come to you with good ideas. They come to you with partnership opportunities. They come to you with ways to help serve their own needs, which is make us a stronger, better company. And, whether it's building up my own team, whether it's getting happier customers or happier partners and investors, I love all of it. I really do. And I know the mechanics sound boring, and believe me, there are days that it is just mind numbing. But it's all just, how do you get all these pieces working well together? And when you do, it's magical.
Yeah, very cool. And it's good to put a positive spin on it. But I assume you guys all sleep a little bit better when you hang up that day.
I sleep really well that night. On my purple mattress, I sleep like a baby.
Really cool. One or two more questions and we'll wrap up and
Sure.
Call it good. How do you learn? Do you learn through reading? Do you learn through mentors? Do you learn through some other way that I'm not bringing up? How do you keep your education going?
So first, I'll just say I love learning. I have an insatiable appetite, and in many ways, it's an Achilles heel. Is I can't help myself but want to go deep into everything, and I don't have the time, and it's not always the best use of my time to go deep into things. But I was the kid who took every. I mean, again, I started as an engineer. I was the kid who took every toy apart and put it back together, sometimes making improvements along the way. I love learning, and it's work. I mean, it's just something you have to want to do, and some learning happens through reading, and whether it's books, which I'm always trying to read a few of, or whether it's or whether it's actually getting in and hands on. I mean, I find there's nothing like getting in and talking to people, whether it's how we do gap accounting and the legalities there, to engineering work, to marketing work, to channel work. I ask a lot of questions. I'm constantly asking questions, sometimes just for me because I'm curious and I want to be able to better be helpful, and sometimes because no one else is asking and someone should. But I think a lot of learning comes from sitting on the shoulders of others who figured things out ahead of you. And reading is one way to get to that, but it's very impersonal.
Yeah.
I work very hard. I'm on many councils. I'm in many groups of peers, other CEOs. I've had some through the years who've mentored me, not as many as I would have liked, but kind of like what you do with parenting, and you try to give your children the things you didn't necessarily get yourself. I try to give back where I can too, and engage with a lot of employees at a level fairly deep in their career, and not necessarily people who aren't direct reports to me, and people outside the company too, whom I believe in, and I see a lot of potential, and whom I can help out, and I love helping to sort of foster their careers and grow. But I always learn something through that process. It's a very reciprocal engagement, and it's the more I engage with people, the more I learn about what they've done and their mistakes and their successes. It all becomes part of who I am, and it's just constant with me.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I know you're a very busy person, and we're right in between Christmas and New Year, so I really appreciate you taking the time to be on today, and look forward to working with you and your team in 2021. And thanks for being a part of the Silicon Slopes community.
No, thank you. And by the way, just to say it, I think the work Silicon Slopes is doing is great, and the progress that's been made over the last few years, especially in Utah, is really remarkable. So happy to help out anytime and keep up the great work. We really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Happy New
you.
Year.
Happy New
Bye
Year.
bye.